Hey there, everyone. Welcome on into VGMporium, video game music and more. I'm the proprietor / your host of this fine establishment. I kind of messed that one up. Rage Cage. And today's topic is, well, actually, I'm going to let my guest here explain this one to you.
Sure. Hey, everybody. I'm Gene. I'm one of the co-hosts of Pixelated Audio, and I'm on VGMporium today because I'm peddling my wares. We've got some albums from artists or composers who are better known for things outside of video games. Now, that's not that unusual of a topic, but these are people that are, generally speaking, relatively famous outside of games for something or another. Obviously, games as a medium have been around for a very long time, so this is not a new phenomenon, but, you know, it's always kind of cool to kind of explore these artists that would normally just never really approach games and just see what their take on things is. You know, famously, the earliest example that most people would often bring up is like, oh, Trent Reznor worked on Quake. But it's since then you've had a lot more examples of this. So, yeah. That's why I'm here today. It's a topic that it's weird. It's kind of like offbeat. I felt like it'd be perfect for your show.
Yeah, no, I'm all about kind of getting into like just the weird kind of obscure out of the norms type stuff. If you had a chance to listen to it at all, you kind of know.
Oh, I have. Yeah, I've definitely listened to your show. That's kind of why I was like, this would fit perfectly. I remember you did the one about like the really bad remixes way back in the day.
Oh yeah, the Overlooked remix thing.
Yeah, Overlooked remix. I felt like.
Oh yeah. No, that I'm about due to kind of do a second one because there's just so much amazing gold to just dig from that site.
Exactly, and the whole thing about your show, I feel like, is you really are not afraid to kind of dig into some of these more like out there topics, and they're still great music. Like I love all of my picks, but yeah. Yeah, no, it's I think I may have mentioned this to you guys before on Discord chat, and when I first met you at the Button Masher show in October of 2022. Like at the DNA Lounge. And great show, yeah.
Yeah, man, that was an amazing show. Yeah, I mentioned to you guys that your show was actually my first VGM podcast that I had listened to back in like I started listening to about maybe 2015, 2016, I think, or so. I can't remember. It's just time is such a strange concept right now. But yeah, no, it's just I loved what you guys were doing, just like kind of digging into these really like obscure soundtracks that nobody really talks about because they were only just starting to come out on like VGM rips. That was like kind of like really got me going. And then when I finally got to do my own podcast, that was kind of like one of the bases that I went off of, is like kind of getting into those kind of topics, but maybe not as in depth as you guys get.
Oh, no, that's totally fine. One of the things that we really do strive for on our show is, it's not like deep dives in the sense that we spend 4 hours talking about a topic, but it can be sometimes a little bit of effort and research time spent digging in, and I understand why not everybody wants to do it. Totally get, it affects our show cadence too. Sometimes shows don't come out as quickly as we'd like for that same reasons, but the point, everybody has their niche. That just happens to be ours.
Well, they are well worth the wait because whenever they come out, they're just a delight to listen to, just like some of the cool things you kind of come up with.
Yeah. Our most recent episode as of this recording was Super Mega Zero, and I'm going to mention this because I know that one's going to feel a little bit out of left field for most people because they don't know the composer or the game, but I can assure you that's a great one. It's one of these, like, I've been tangentially aware of the composer for like 5-6 years now, and everything lined up perfectly. They worked on a game. The game soundtrack's awesome, and I'm like, okay, who cares if it's not going to get that many listeners?
Yeah, no, I listened to that when I had to make a drive out to Lake County of all places for my job, so that kind of made it a little easier. And DDR Kirby ISQ was somebody I also kind of had on my radar for a bit, and the last major time I heard of them was I did a recording at the Sacramento Gamers Expo, and I talked to this guy Danny Tatro, who runs a Armageddon Potato Games. He gets prototype cartridges and uploads them and makes them available to the public.
Oh, nice.
And he actually uses one of DDR Kirby's songs as like his theme for like when he does videos and stuff. So it's kind of like I played that on the show too. So so it's kind of cool to see him come up on your show and actually like hear him talk and kind of get an idea of like where he's coming from.
His music tends to make the round a lot in indie circles because it's kind of like he's underground enough that he probably doesn't charge crazy money, but his music is super polished, like really, really good.
Oh, so, yeah. No, it was really good stuff. But speaking of polished music, what's this track that we came in on? This is actually one of your picks here.
Absolutely, yeah. So I wanted to pick something that was a kind of nice background as we were going through little intros. So this track is from the game D2, the Dreamcast game, part of the trilogy of D games, composed and made by KENJI ENO. I don't know how I'm going to talk about Eno in a brief period, but suffice it to say, KENJI ENO is one of these people that you just cannot put in a box. I mean, he's probably best known as a game designer, but he was kind of just a madman that did a little bit of everything. This track is called Distraction 21, but the name doesn't really matter because all of the tracks are like... He just like wrote a lot of music. He was just one of these like endlessly creative folks that would just like, design games, write music, code, write short stories. He was just like he had a lot of output. So all of the tracks are like, sketch this or distraction this or whatever. Like all of his games have weirdly titled tracks.
I was listening. Yeah, kind of listened to a few of their songs, and like I remember D2 was kind of like one of those ones I saw at like one of my game shops for Dreamcast, like back in the day, and all it was just a picture of like a blonde lady with her eyes closed, and then the D2 on there, and so it didn't really intrigue me. But like later on, I kind of read about it, heard like I think a couple podcasts about it, and the music, of course, is really intriguing. And I'm kind of thinking about maybe trying to check this one out again if I can, find it.
The game, the soundtrack itself is really all over the place, and I don't mean that like it's bad. It's just like stylistically, you're gonna listen to it and be like almost put off by how wild the shifts are. The guy,
I think the one I can kind of like compare it to is Killer 7, which
I'm glad you actually brought that up because one of the things that one of my like axes to grind about this is I probably will do a show on KENJI ENO at some point in depth, but he's kind of like an early version of a Suda 51 or Hideo Kojima. Yeah, like I feel like he kind of gets forgotten about a little bit because from a gameplay perspective, none of his games really landed the way like Metal Gear Solid or Killer 7 or, any of those auteur Japanese developer type games. But if he had been just a few years later, I think he would have been right there with the wave of like,
like, the right, everybody who was kind of like, maybe a little not quite mature, like, I don't know if it's the right word, but like, mature enough to kind of like, or ready for it. But a couple of like would be ready for it by then, which of course said Metal Gear Solid or Metal Gear and Killer 7 coming out, people were like, ooh, kind of gravitate towards that. So
I mean the majority of his output was in the 90s, and D2 was kind of the magnum opus end cap. He had a few more small games after that, but this was kind of, I think, where he was like, you know what, I'm kind of done. He's unfortunately no longer with us. He passed away some years ago, but he's just one of these guys that the more you read about him, the more fascinating he becomes as an individual. And he really, I think he understood where games were going, like in terms of not just production values, but like really trying, like I kind of compare him specifically to like if you mixed Hideo Kojima with what's his name from Silent Hill, who's the composer on that one?
Oh jeez, I can't remember. I know.
Hold on.
There you go.
Silent Hill composer, Akira Yamaoka. Yeah, Akira Yamaoka.
Okay.
Yeah. Like his musical style is a lot like that, like this very, like, alt, grunge, rock, kind of like very, like, metal industrial, like kind of these darker electronic genres.
Yeah, and released with like some ambient.
Yeah, and ambient stuff too. Yeah, so like I think his stuff is really interesting. I wouldn't say he's like the best at any one of those things, but just from a like, you gotta respect how prolific he was.
All this stuff, like and at like the level that he was doing it too. Like this is like kind of like, I don't know if it was a major release, but still it's like on like one of the mainline consoles at the time, so it's kind of.
Yeah, it was a major release for the Dreamcast, but keep in mind his previous big major releases were on the Saturn and the 3DO, so this guy knew how to pick the losers.
Or the winners, depending on how you look at it.
That's true. D2 is still pretty cool to go back to. I haven't played it yet, but I've heard so many good things. It's a series that I really want to get through.
Yeah, no, it's like, it just seems so out there and weird. Like, said I played Killer 7 to death, and I'm currently actually playing through No More Heroes, and I played a few other Suda51's games, so I feel like this is like a kind of game that I'd be able to really, get into now. Like, I'm kind of in that same boat with you right now.
Oh, yeah, I love those sort of, I wouldn't even call them art games exactly, but sort of like slightly offbeat, Japanese artsy games. Guys have a vision, and he wants to do it. Doesn't care how ridiculous or wacky it is and how made off put people. He's doing it. Exactly. Well, that's I could go on all day about this, so I'm gonna hand it back over to you.
Okay, so I'm gonna bring in our next track, and this the composer on this one is definitely a big name outside of video games. Like most people know them for one particular anime series, and I'll talk about that when we get back. So this is Ashikage theme from the game Nobunaga no Yabou Bushou Fuunroku, and this is the PC Engine version, and this was composed by YOKO KANNO. So that was Ashikage theme from Nobunaga no Yabou, Bushou Fuunroku, and that was composed by YOKO KANNO, and this was the PC Engine version. So now, as most may know, like avid anime fans may know, YOKO KANNO name immediately brings up Cowboy Bebop, because she's the one who actually composed all that music, all that crazy jazzy madness that we experienced back in 1997 and still can experience today. And yeah, she's done a lot of other soundtracks, like I think, I want to say, what is it? Did she do Space Dandy as well?
I'm actually looking at Wiki right now. Yeah, she worked on Space Dandy, going all the way back. She worked on Macross Plus way back in the day.
Oh, dang.
Okay, yeah.
There
Card Captor Sakura. She worked on one of the themes there.
Wow.
Escaflowne. A lot of names that I recognize from anime that I never watched, but
yeah,
you know, it's like,
or may have just like kind of came across because it was on TV at one point. You know, when they just put it out there.
Yeah. Is this the time to talk about this? As a fellow Californian, I didn't realize this until very recently. We were one of the first markets in the U.S., I believe it was PBS, to get anime on TV in the early 90s. I want this recorded somewhere, because I was watching weird stuff in like 91, 92, and I just thought, well, it was just on TV. Turns out, no, PBS was like one of the earliest Western affiliates to have English dubbed anime on TV, and I'm like...
Yeah, I have a very vague, like, you know, in the 90s, I was like, let's see, 91, 92, I was like maybe like, let's see, like 4 or 5-ish or so. So I just have the vaguest memory of seeing just like these kind of really cool looking things with some you know, questionable, you know, sounding you know, acting in it, but
sure.
Yeah, it was kind of, yeah, just very vaguest memories. But back onto YOKO KANNO, she before she was like, you know, became like, you know, Miss Cowboy Bebop, she was working with KOHEI before, you know, they came KOHEI Tecmo on the series of games called Nobunaga's Ambition, as well as the Uncharted Waters. So a lot of like historical kind of like strategy RPG or action game, I think adventure games type thing.
Yeah, they're I mean, Uncharted Waters is specifically like a trader type game. It's kind of like you are a seafaring captain. You can choose, I think in both games, but at least in the second one you can choose one of about 5 or 6 stories. So it's like the general mechanics are the same. You go to port cities, you gather materials, you sell. I believe you sometimes have battles out on the ocean. Think of it like a simplified version of like Pirates, Sid Meier's Pirates.
Okay.
But not quite as heavy on the like combat or mini games. It controls a little bit more like a JRPG in a way. Like you walk around the town on a grid, and you know, like the menu, a lot of menu driven stuff. I mean, I guess Western games at this time were like that too, but Exactly. It was a lot more. It was pretty simple. But yeah, I know her from Uncharted Waters. I know her game output from Uncharted Waters. Obviously, she is synonymous to me with anime. Specifically, Cowboy Bebop and Space Dandy are kind of the big ones, but that's not the only ones. I mean, yeah, that's...
Yeah, and she's also been, like, you know, involved with a couple of movies, you know, starting in 1994, Yamato Tekuro. So it's a lot of Japanese, you know, of course, Japanese-only movies that probably never made it here to the States.
Yeah.
And she's still doing it, like, you know, from 94 to 2015. One of her latest works is actually a television drama called The Makanai, Cooking for the Maiko House in 2023. So she's actually working on the music, either worked on the music or working on the music still for the show. It's kind of...
you know, I was going to joke and say, oh, this one's not one not to miss. But actually, I think I did see this on Netflix.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah, no, I was looking at this, and like I've seen that little preview image on Netflix. It's one of their like top promoted shows. So... somebody knew what they were doing by hiring her. It wasn't just some like TV J drama that like you just put on in the background.
Well, people love cooking. Is it? So it's a drama show, but it's about cooking?
I have no idea. I just know I know I've seen it on Netflix in the scroll, you know, the infinite scroll. So it's it literally just came out in January of 2023, so it's very recent.
Okay. Oh wow. So what is next on your roster here for
one of the things I like about shows like this is there's a little bit of a pick counter pick. So since you talked about somebody that's best known for anime, I figured I'll do you one better and have another composer that is pretty much known for anime. So this is from the game Gravity Rush. The composer is Kohei Tanaka, and the track is called Pleasure Quarter.
That was Pleasure Quarter from Gravity Rush by KOHEI Tanaka. So what has this man done?
So KOHEI Tanaka has a few games that I think people are familiar with. This is from Gravity Rush. You know, basically Gravity Rush 1 and 2, Alundra 1 and 2. But to be honest, that's about it. I mean, this guy is also Mr. Anime. Like, his list of games on Wikipedia is like a quarter or a half a page. His anime list is like 5 times longer. I mean, starting all the way back at the very beginning, he did arrangements for the original Dragon Ball, you know, the 1986 version.
Okay.
He worked on the Pat Labor series. What else? There's some other things in here that I recognize. The Pokemon the movie 2000. Went to see that one in theaters. Sorry,
Same.
Dad. I was pretty young at the time, and he. Oh wait, no, not 2000. I think the original Pokemon movie, which may have been a little earlier. But was that the one? No, that wasn't the one. But I stand by my statement. Sorry, Dad. But yeah, he's been working on anime basically just consistently since 1985, and has stuff pretty much every year up to about 2021. Not everything is super well known, but I mean, we're talking very, very consistent work for, 30 years. My kind of hypothesis here is, I mean, the dude's been writing music for so long at this point that I think he's just gotten really good at writing in a certain style. And I don't know if you've played Gravity Rush,
No.
which you haven't, which is a shame. It's a great game. Gravity Rush is essentially anime Spider-Man. It's like an open world game where you can pretty much shoot around in any given direction. So you have the power of, like, I wouldn't even call it flight. You just essentially invert gravity. But practically that means you have, like, a character that can fly around like a bullet in literally any direction. It's like, you know what? I want to go up and to the left. Bam. And suddenly you're flying towards a building up there. And so you're in this big world with, like, castles and cities and everything floating around in the sky. Because, of course, it has to make sense with your power to fly around.
Yeah.
And one of the main areas has the Pleasure Quarter, which is essentially, like, I think they're going for that New Orleans, Dixieland, big band thing.
That banjo in the background I mentioned earlier was, I like that.
So I don't think that he was going for like a VGM kind of sound as much as just like what would be appropriate for like a casino area where, you can go out on the town. And I think he really pulled it off. I mean, this whole soundtrack is awesome. And I feel like what I think maybe caught some people off guard is they don't really know him, and then they heard the soundtrack and it's like, wow, this is so good. Where did this guy come from? Well,
yeah,
he's been working on anime more so than games, so he's in there like fully formed essentially. His skills are already very well defined.
Yeah, and he's not out to like write video games specifically. He's just out writing music. So if you were to hear the soundtrack and not knowing that it's from a game, you wouldn't be able to really tell.
No, not necessarily. And I haven't played Gravity Rush 2 because I don't have a PS4. I played this on the original Vita. R.I.P. Vita means life.
Yeah.
I loved that system. It was probably one of my favorites.
Yeah, that's one I missed on. Like I think as I mentioned in the break, my last PlayStation console was the original PSP 1000 model. So and that was my last modern console too. So like I just got the Switch, and so it's been like almost probably a little more than 10 years since I've had a new console other than my, computer.
Well, congratulations on joining this decade. I hope you have a good time.
Yeah,
the Switch is a great one.
I'm already almost a decade behind with the Switch because it's already 7 years old.
Has it been that long? Okay, fair enough, yes. So the Switch 2 has been announced as of this podcast. just to make you feel out of date. No, I'm kidding. I don't know. I'm making that up.
Feeling that 35 already. So yeah, no, it's really cool to kind of say this is not something I would normally bring on, kind of out of my wheelhouse. So I got a group here that's actually more known for just some weird, wacko, bonkers music. In that list that you sent me, there was a one name that stood out to me and kind of maybe explore this and found out they actually made a game. So this is the only track name I have as ADOINT, and this is from the Adventures of the Smart Patrol. And this was by one or all the members of DEVO. that weirdo little tune was ADOINT, and that's the only name I got for it. And that was from the game Adventures of the Smart Patrol, presented by DEVO. And I'm gonna say that this was most likely is composed by Mark Mothersbaugh.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. Mark Mothersbaugh is one of these like workhorse composers. I mean, he did the Lego Movie. He's been Yeah, Mark Mothersbaugh, like he's one of those like secret music producers behind a lot of projects that you didn't realize that he worked on. And I say that just because he writes a lot of music. He's very much in that like Hollywood. If a contract or something comes my way, I'll work on it. He's just like very prolific. He doesn't. I think his experience in DEVO allowed him to kind of get weird with it. But since then, he's kind of been a little bit more mainstream. That said, I'm a big fan of Mark Mothersbaugh, and in fact, I've been seeing his name a lot recently. I feel like.
Yeah, myself, I like DEVO. I kind of got into them a little bit, but actually a couple of my friends, especially his wife, is a DEVO head to the extreme. Like, she's gone to a lot of their live shows. They actually just went to the recent show they had in Vegas, I think. Mm-hmm. And she's got like I think a picture of herself with them and stuff. And she's just full mad at that. But I don't know if she knows about this game. And I was surprised to see that on your list. And I did some exploring, getting ready for this, and it's a weird game. It's like if Myst was made by DEVO, basically.
That was, somewhere in the mid-90s, somebody thought you just slap a license onto some like weird Myst-like adventure game and you're going to have a hit. It was not.
But no, this was actually had DEVO's direct involvement. Like they were actually involved with making this game. Like, okay.
Yeah,
so this is not just like, somebody made a random game and then, stuck DEVO stuff in there. Like, the guys came in and did stuff. No, they were like, I looked into this and they were involved with just making this game. Like, this is their game, basically.
Huh.
Yeah, and I had to dig into the ISO to find I was trying to find a specific track I heard in a long play. I couldn't find it anywhere because, like, it was all separated in, like, folders labeled, like, AF or LV and stuff like that. And then all the files had names that didn't make any sense, and they were all .AIFF and .move. And, a lot of them were just, like talking, just, like, audio
voice
clips that were playing in the game. And then a few of their actual songs that are in the game, albeit very compressed. And then this little thing I found. So I didn't find the one I was looking for, but I found one that I liked enough, or I liked about as much as the same. If my English is failing me right now, but you get the point.
I'm reading the Wikipedia description on this. The player has 12 in-game hours to capture Turkey Monkey, an insane, horrible freak mutant, the result of a rogue recombinant DNA experiment.
Yeah, no, that thing. If you check out the long plays or even like play the game, that thing is like there in the intro, and you know it's there when you hear the flapping and it's making this horrible, weird screeching noise.
Oh
it's
man!
It's basically like a chicken with like kind of like that. How like in the 90s they were doing a lot of the cutout stuff and like with the mouth and the eyes and things. It's basically that.
Yeah, this game pretty much encapsulates weird 90s art to me, from what I can tell.
Yeah, no, this thing is definitely of its time. And, and reviews say it wasn't all that great, like it was kind of, meh. But now, like, what's this?
What's what?
Hold up.
Oh. Hey.
This big lump right here.
Who's that cat over there?
He's been hanging out with me this entire time. And he just now decided to jump up. Ugh. At least you didn't try to. Come on. I don't know. He's gotten big. He's not even a year old, and he's like bigger than our 7-year-old cat.
Oh wow.
Yeah. It's insane. And yeah, speaking of insanity, of course, DEVO. Most people's, I'd imagine, our age know DEVO, and most probably anybody should hopefully know DEVO.
Even if you don't look up Mark Mothersbaugh, he's been composing music consistently since the 70s, and I guarantee you're going to see his name attached to a project you are surprised to see it on. And I guess there's a Puyo Puyo movie coming that has his music in it.
What?
I didn't even know that was a thing. I'm on IMDb
Puyo Puyo?
right now.
Wait,
okay.
Seriously? Puyo Puyo?
All right. That's what it says on IMDb. It says it came out.
I'm down for some Madoga Monogatari up.
It came out in November? What the heck? Anyway, whatever. It's fine.
Well, that's a future check out there. I'm gonna have to look into that myself. Okay. So, all right. So I believe it's now your track here.
Sure. I'm going to keep it going with the composers that have a lot of music credits along those lines. So this next track is Mushroom Speedway from Spyro 3, composed by Stewart Copeland.
And that was Mushroom Speedway from Spyro 3, Year of the Dragon, composed by Stewart Copeland.
And that specifically was the uncompressed version. So this is an interesting one. This track specifically. So several years back, we had Josh Mansell of the Crash Bandicoot series come onto the show. We talked about the entire trilogy. And one of the things that he was really adamant about was that for any track that we played, he wanted us to play the uncompressed versions because just because of the way game development was going at the time, and these guys, I think both Stewart Copeland and Josh Mansell, based on this like recreation process where they actually have these originals, they were studio guys. They were working in the studio. They were writing music, and in fact, Josh was a protege of Mark Mothersbaugh. He mentioned him a lot during the episode. But, you know, like they all were in the music industry, like in Los Angeles around the same time. They either knew about each other or knew each other's music or had worked on projects. You know, like there's a lot of influence. But the point is, this track, the original, it does not, you know, it sounds good. It's a nice composition. But hearing it in this uncompressed, more lively version, I just like...
Yeah, I imagine it's like the way that he probably had originally wanted to have it sound.
Probably almost exactly. So I don't know the story of this specific uncompressed soundtrack, but it sounds like he either released all of it or... Because I know that they used it for the remaster. Yeah, Stewart Copeland's another one of those interesting guys. I mean, people probably know him better from his work in the Police. He has kind of an interesting background. He's actually an American originally and ended up moving to England, where he started to work with Sting and others. He was actually the band leader, the person who formed the band, and was kind of the songwriter and composer until Sting sort of superseded him in terms of like visibility, and everybody kind of associates the band with him. But Stewart Copeland is quite literally, the backbone as the drummer, and well, maybe not literally, but figuratively, literally, he was the core songwriter and the drummer for the band. So, there wouldn't be the Police without him. And it doesn't surprise me that he went on to work on a lot of music for a lot of other things. He's not super prolific in games, but he is, very tied closely to the Spyro trilogy, which he worked on. But he's had tracks in like Guitar Hero and things like that from the Police, but that barely counts. I mean, that's just
because
taking...
it's just the band.
Yeah.
Like music from the band stuff. And
Exactly. And then he kind of left games after that. I mean, of course, he did the remastered stuff for the Spyro trilogy, but that's essentially just taking the work that he had already done and, either providing them the original files or samples or, reference. I'm sure he did work on it, but like he's not really a games guy. Not really at all.
I'm seeing a lot of like, he has like a few TV credits and a lot of like film credits too. Yep,
a lot of film credits, which I wouldn't say surprised me. I think he's just working on smaller films because I don't recognize a lot of them. But still, I mean, we're talking like he's done like 40 or 50 films, which is it's nothing to sneeze at. And, part of my motivation for doing this show, just to kind of circle back around, was that there's a lot of composers out there that are better known for other things. And it's so easy to get overshadowed by like, oh, weren't you the drummer for the Police? And he's like, yeah, like 40 years ago. And like, I've done a lot of other things since then. And so there just tends to be like something supersedes your notoriety, and like anything else, like people still come up to you and ask like, whatever, so one of my, I wanted to bring this one up specifically. One of my favorite examples is the composer / artist John Cage, the infamous 433 silent music that everybody makes jokes about. He was like a multimedia artist. I mean, that was almost like a throwaway piece for him. He's written a lot of like actual music. He's done like visual art and mixed media stuff. But, anytime anybody needs to bring up a joke about, somebody listening to silence, it's like, oh, I'm performing John Cage's 433. It's like it's like one of those cases where, and again, he's also deceased now, but I'm sure if we were to ask him, he'd be like, whatever, it happened. I don't even care anymore. I'm just going to continue working on everything else I'm doing.
Yeah, it's kind of stupid when people like hyperfixate on just like the one off project they did, like probably just did it because he was just probably trying to make like a point or like
he was trying to make a statement about the stuffiness of classical Western music composer culture. Like you're supposed to sit there in like rapt attention to somebody, they come out onto the stage, they like do all of the performative aspects. They walk in very quietly, they bow, they like sit very, very stately at the piano, and then they sit there, and then they close the piano, and then a lot of people got mad, a lot of people wrote about it, but in general it was not meant to be like, oh my goodness. It was essentially an auditory example of like the white canvas. However you like those kinds of pieces of art, but it's still like,
he's probably just, for him it was just like, hey, this thing, see how silly all this is?
Pretty much. Yeah. But now it's become the butt of jokes. Anyway, we've talked about 433 longer than we needed to.
Yeah, no. Actually, this kind of cool. Like the way how our track listing is kind of so far flowing right now is actually appropriate, because the next track I got here for you is actually from a pretty well-known like American folk musician. This is Klaymens' theme from the game The Neverhood, and this was composed by Terry Scott Taylor. that was Klaymens' theme from the game The Neverhood, and this was composed by Terry Scott Taylor.
What a lovely track there. I've never played the game. I've never heard the soundtrack, but I really liked it. Yeah, you mentioned folk music. I'm definitely getting a lot of that.
Yeah, all the music in this is by him, and it's like just the same stuff, kind of a lot of like just like acoustic, like guitar, banjo, him using a lot of his voice, making like weird like instrumentation sounds, and yeah, it's all over the place, and it fits with the game. Really, because like I did play this through like maybe like 2009. I just kind of came upon it, found an ISO, and just was able to actually play it on my laptop at the time, and I had a fun time with it. I think I played through it maybe a couple times. That's probably all you could really get out of it before you're like, okay, the gameplay is a little slow and plotting and stuff, but the overall, like, the game itself is just a really fun presentation because it's all stop motion claymation.
Yeah, I've never played the game, but I remember when it was coming out, like, it was in newspapers and game magazines and everything everywhere because it just was so, like, striking. You look at a screenshot and you recognize it immediately. Like, there's no mistaking it except for, like, other claymation things that this studio has done. But it's like... Yeah, it was just so eye-catching. It still today has a very, very cool, like, kind of, I wouldn't say grotesque, but, proportions are all a little bit, like, wonky.
Yeah, it's all wonky, yeah.
Yeah, it's just very, very cool. It reminds me a lot of Abe's Odyssey. I think it was that the same developer, right?
I think it was a different studio.
It might be, but I feel like they were aiming for the same kind of thing, because the Neverhood also has a slightly... simpler, but kind of like it has like almost like a claymation look to it. But that said,
yeah,
I mean, I applaud any game that goes for an interesting aesthetic, art style, musical landscape, narrative structure. Games are hard to do in the first place, and I think it's very easy to fall into the trap of just recreating another game with a lower budget, especially in the indie space. But like seeing people that are like, well, what can I do on, the $50 I've got, basically.
Yeah, another example, like, using stop motion kind of like this is Hylix, which is another one I haven't played. It's really, really trippy and cool looking. I actually follow the guy on Twitter, and he's always just posting like random stop motion stuff he makes, and he sometimes will share like, the process of what he does, like what he's using to record it, or, what he's recording, and then what he's using like to post processes everything, because yeah, that game is really, really crazy looking because there's a mix of stop motion, he'll have like a lot of hand stuff going on. It's all digitized and stylized in this really cool way. So I would imagine he was really probably inspired by this game, just the way how it's all presented.
Oh, I bet. I mean, and to kind of back up, the Neverhood was a very well-funded game, very expensive.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I mean, I've seen some indie games use stop motion to great effect as well. It's just, it can be very, very cool if done right. And, I think to kind of talk about something that's been circling in my mind just throughout this episode and why it's been kind of hard for me to figure out how to turn this into a show is like, I feel like when you have composers from another domain, let's say, film, TV, not games, there's kind of a couple of challenges at play. You have composers who are not necessarily versed in the whole game development process. So there's the technical challenges of like, how do you communicate to them, or how do they figure out how to translate what they're doing? Like in the case of the Copeland piece, like just literally taking a track that you produced in your audio workstation and it's like, oh wow, I can't just send you a WAV file and you can use that, and now I have to compress it down. Oh wait, it's compressed in a really weird way. It's like it's not like a straightforward. And these are smart, capable people. That's one thing. And the other thing is, what do you do with like a lot of this music? Like, I think video game music has come to be associated with a certain kind of sound. And okay, maybe it's a little bit different based on which country you're in, but it's like you hear something like or generation, right? And you hear something like this and it's like, huh? Right? Like I mean, this isn't even that odd of a track, but like if I had heard this in like, I don't know, what was the year 97 when this came out, Neverhood, I would have been a little bit like surprised. It's like, this doesn't make sense. And I think you can't really, when you don't know what to do with something, you just sort of like ignore it a little bit. And a lot of the game music that we've talked about is kind of like that. It's either from people who were only there for a brief period or did something so out of the blue, it's kind of like, Anyways. Oh, look at Koji Kondo released another game. It's like, well, okay. Yeah, I mean, that's great, I'm sure. But
yeah, it is a really weird because because when we were talking about this like the week previous, I was kind of figuring out how are we gonna do this? 'Cause, like, yeah, there's like really the only body of work we can present is like the works that they were doing outside of the game, because like you were saying, they're like, this one is like only a one-off for him. Like he was only involved with this game and then another one, Skull Monkeys, by the same studio, and that's his only game involvement. And other than that, outside of that, he's like I mentioned, like a folk musician. So he's done a lot of like solo stuff, a lot of just with everybody. He's all over the place. On
Pixelated Audio, a couple years back, we interviewed Chris Schlarb, the composer for Dropsy. He's almost exactly the same mold. He's like a folk indie dude who just kind of ended up in games because somebody liked his music from another, like just was listening and liked his music. And you could tell like he just comes at it from a studio band musician philosophy. And it's just like, as much as I love that soundtrack and his work in games, I totally get why he doesn't really have much of a following for his work in games. Obviously, he hasn't worked on that many, but it's like it's just so different from everything else. That whole thing is basically like, like a drone folk rock psychedelic album, and that's just not what VGM folks usually go for. I love weird stuff. I love all the weird stuff. So for me, it's just like I latched onto that game and that soundtrack so much, as I'm sure if I'd played this game, I would have done the exact same thing. This sounds great. I want to listen to the rest of it.
It's actually one of the ones I kind of go back to every once in a while. Like, I have it on my little thumb drive in my car, and I'll just, like it'll just have it play through random and just kind of listen to it all. And actually on this one, there's a lot of songs in here that are like really, like, you ever play Wario Land 4?
A little bit, yeah. It's a good game.
So you know how like there's a little gallery section where you can unlock like little tunes and stuff that are just like random little things that are in there. Like sometimes it'll be like somebody whispering, it'll be like a whole song or an instrumental version of that first stage you play through.
Oh, I was gonna say I don't remember that, but WarioWare does a lot of weird stuff like that too.
Yeah, Wario Land 4 is kind of like giving like a precursor of what WarioWare was gonna be with that little gallery. But with this game, there is kind of like a similar thing. There's like this hall that you go through, like that kind of unlocks things as you're playing through the game, like little facts about like little background facts, so like history stuff about the world. But there's this part where you actually can find like a little radio that plays music, and it's all music by like Terry, and it's just weird stuff. Just like he was just having fun making these weird little tunes, and they didn't know what to do with them, so they just stuck them in this little radio inside this gallery hall. And it's great, and a good 50% of the soundtrack is just that. Like, there's 50% in-game stuff and then 50% just this weird random stuff they decided to just, keep in there.
I'm just glad that indie games have now sort of embraced the fact that, like, there are pretty much no limitations to what you can do. Like, people were trying some of this stuff in the 90s to some level of success, but now it's like, oh yeah, I can make an FMV game that's real weird. Or I can make, like, a game that's barely a game. And I guess that's kind of what's interesting to me is, like, you have all of these artists that exist in a different medium, or in some cases just on the fringes, although we haven't really covered anybody like that. And then they sort of come out swinging, and everybody is like sort of taken by surprise because, just the way internet attention works, you can't really keep up with somebody until something gets big enough where it's worthy of note. Like, I just had this conversation with somebody. Toby Fox, he blew up with Undertale, but before that he was involved in like what was it Homestuck? I think he was
Homestuck series, and like before that he was just doing ROM hacks of Earthbound and stuff too.
Exactly. So it's not like Undertale literally came out of nowhere. It was like he already had built up a following, and suddenly this project had enough, like, the powder keg was there, and the match was lit, and boom, the game blew up. But yeah, I mean, it's cool when it happens, but it's also cool to kind of cover some things where it's less, it didn't happen.
Yeah, I think we're down to your last track here, and I'm familiar with this name of, like, the game itself, but I'm kind of thinking about getting it. But what is this?
Sure. So this last track is from the game Child of Light. Folks might recognize it. It was a sort of a solid but not crazy good JRPG made by Ubisoft. Came out, I think, 2014 or something. This is the song Jupiter's Lightning, composed by Beatrice Martin, also known as Cœur de Pirate, which means pirate's heart, but we'll talk about that in a bit.
So that was Jupiter's Lightning from Child of Light, composed by Beatrice Martin. And what was her other name? I forgot to write that down.
Oh, yeah, it's Cœur de Pirate, which means pirate's heart in French. So this is such an interesting, like, not story exactly, but, like, so you play this game, and it's a really strong soundtrack. It's got a lot of, like, piano-driven melodies, and then you got, like, this awesome battle theme, which would not sound out of place in any JRPG. It's like, it totally fits the mood perfectly. And then I look into the artist, and I'm like, wait, what? Beatrice Martin is a French-Canadian singer-songwriter. Like, think like Adele or, you know, some of the later Lady Gaga stuff. And by French-Canadian, I mean literally most of her music is in French. So she started out her artist career, like, I read up a little bit on her. She decided to start off singing intentionally in French because it's like, well, there's so many English artists out there, you know, not so much like I want to differentiate myself, but like to be true to, I believe she's from Quebec. So, you know, she speaks French natively. And, you know, that's just been her artist identity. And obviously because of the relationship to Ubisoft, they probably had somebody at the studio who's a big fan of her music and was like, hey, I think this would be a good idea. So they had her score it. I'm pretty sure this is her only game, or at least I can't think of anything else that she's done.
Yeah, no, I haven't heard of her until like that you brought her up with your choice here.
Yeah, and I just was really taken in by this soundtrack. The game itself is like I said, it's a solid JRPG. Mechanically, it's sound like you know bread and butter. You got your attack, magic, items, run sort of thing.
Yeah.
But it has a really cool kind of like. Did you ever see the movie Book of Kells?
Yes.
Or The Secret of Kells? Yeah, it's kind of got like that sort of painterly storybook fairy tale art style, and it really works. It was one of the first games that I played on my Vita. It's on everything, but
I've seen it on the eShop and kind of hemmed and hawed about it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for an RPG that doesn't commit any major sins, but also doesn't necessarily do anything super crazy, I think it's like a 15-20 hour game, so it'll you'll breeze through it pretty quick. But the soundtrack was the thing that got me. The soundtrack and the music. The writing is a little suspect because they try to make every line into a rhyme scheme, and since they're a French-Canadian company, The rhymes sometimes are clumsy.
But trying to pull a zigzag the Grand Vizier thing here, huh?
But yeah, I've had my eye on this soundtrack basically ever since, and I'm like, I've never really found a good opportunity to talk about it because it's maybe not worthy of an entire show, but I definitely wanted people to hear about it. And even still, if you listen to this, you're like, okay, great. It's like cool JRPG music. But if you look at everything else that she's done, it's like completely 180. It has almost nothing to do with what you heard in the game.
Okay, and that kind of makes it what stands out.
Yeah,
it's like if you're a person that's actually familiar with her body of work, and then you like see her name in like a game, and it's like, whoa, I did not know she had this in her.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a good example of when somebody just brought in some random person to score the game, and it was just, I mean, there's lots of examples. I tried to stay away from anything that like wasn't going to be that interesting to listen to, but there were some weirdo.
Yeah.
There were some weirdo composers out there that are like, we should bring in, I don't know, Captain Beefheart to score our game. Not literally, but like, you know, kind of that aesthetic.
Oh, no. I can imagine it being kind of like, you know, like that Adventure of the Smart Patrol type game. You know,
oh,
like,
absolutely.
Like all like weird stuff like, you know, the fish head replica thing and, you know, what the Neon Night Dreams of an octofish.
Yeah, I think Bad Day at the Midway, was that the one? What is it called? Oh, yeah. Yes, okay. So now I remember. Bad Day at the Midway was written and directed by The Residents. So I wasn't imagining that. Yes, The Residents is another one of those, like, outsider art bands that just makes weird, you know, like, crazy, you know, prog industrial nonsense that is like, what am I listening to? I don't know who did the music for it, but if The Residents designed the game, I bet the music's really clangy and weird.
Oh, jeez. Oh, no.
So it's out there. Yes, the genre is listed as avant-garde, so take that as you will. I should have brought something from that game.
You know, avant-garde, it could be somebody, you know, like playing on a busted cello, shooting BB guns into it, or it could be just somebody playing, you know, tapping sticks against a toilet for 4 hours. Avant-garde.
You know what? I'm gonna like quickly like make a little mental pause here. I'm gonna see if I can find a track really quickly and see if there's like a good excerpt from that. So this is actually from the game Bad Day at the Midway, or Bad Day on the Midway. It's so hard to say. So I guess in '96, the Residents released a soundtrack album titled Have a Bad Day. However, according to the album's liner notes, although it's mostly music from the game, the tracks are presented as small suites and sound collages, sometimes with either new or unused material. So imagine playing a game with this in it and then be like, okay, and then turning it off. That's all I got on like weirdo outsider art that ends up in video games.
Oh, that cover there is even... I ain't seen no rats. That's going to be an interesting juxtaposition against this childlike track. But that's what I'm all about.
I just feel like your show is much more open to like, I don't know, getting weird. I'm all for like auditory whiplash. Yeah, I've had a great time. I mean, I was a little bit worried that the show wouldn't make sense, but even just hearing it as we're talking, I think it's going to turn out really well.
Yeah, no, like and like I said, the tracks that we picked out actually kind of flowed together just right. Even though like, you know, mine were we didn't plan this out at all. It just kind of worked where we were able to kind of, you know, one connected into the other, like with just like weird little facts.
Oh yeah, I mean, I saw which composers you put down, but I really just chose ones that weren't those composers. I wasn't thinking too closely about well, he picked this one, so I should pick that one. It was more like, oh yeah, just don't pick those three.
Yeah, don't pick those three. It's just yeah, so that's just really cool. That's how it all worked out in the end, anyway.
Yeah.
So man, Gene, thank you so much for just coming on and actually, just bringing this weirdo topic in. And just,
Anytime. I got plenty more, I'm sure. I feel like this is one of those ones where I just I don't know, man. I feel like there's a whole subgroup of VGM that is it's almost impossible to talk about it in a good way, and this is one of them.
Yeah, it's just that thing that's always in the back of your mind, and it's just there kind of nagging at you, but you're saying you can't come out. This isn't the place. And until finally you come to the VGMporium, where I'm just all about just bringing out the weirdest of stuff.
Yeah, I'll take that Mark Mothersbaugh album that you got there for 99 cents. Actually, if I buy that and this Residence album, can I get them 2 for $1?
Yeah, sure. I'll throw in this, I'll throw in a little extra little gungy here that I got on the counter here. I don't know what it is, but take it anyway. Get it out of here.
Nice. By the way, my band is playing a show next week. You guys should definitely go.
Nice. Hey, if you got a flyer, just slap it out on the window.
Oh, for sure, man. Thanks.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is what an emporium is. It's just a hodgepodge of weird random stuff. I have no idea what's in here anyway. That's why I've got part-time employees, full-time employees that come in and kind of help curate things, and I have no idea what they're finding or bringing in.
Well, I'm glad I could bring you a few treasures today as well.
Thank you. Yeah, no, these are definitely gonna go on the shelf and may hopefully be a growing section of its own. Because this would be a kind of cool one to kind of revisit.
Yeah, I think your collection of curios expands weekly, pretty much.
Oh yeah, I have. Like I said, I have no idea what's here, what's going on. I really have no idea what I'm doing. Really, I'm surprised I've been doing this for a year now, and I'm.
Congratulations, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. It's so wacky. It's so weird. I'm just kind of throwing it all together each week by week, and it's been fun. Just kind of. It is just kind of like a weird little hobby that's just really fun to do, and kind of again, thank you to you and Brian for kind of introducing me to the world of VGM podcast with your just not weird, but it's just like a cool little show.
Yeah, I mean, that's as a little mini plug, of course. Check out Pixelated Audio. Pixelatedaudio.com is probably the best place. We are on YouTube. We are on Twitter, although with the way things are going, who knows how long that's going to be. But we are actually. One thing that is maybe people don't know, but we are also on archive.org. One of the things we do is, kind of an unspoken part of our mission is archival. Even though you wouldn't know it from hearing us talk on the show. We're a little jokey and we're a little bit, playful. But we do try to go with enough depth that some of this information, or most of it, hopefully is usable in the future. So, we try to do our due diligence on the artists. So on the off chance that our website goes somewhere, you can catch almost all of our old shows. In fact, I'm sure all of our old shows on archive.org as long as they're around. So
yeah, that's where I upload all my stuff, and then I just link it to my WordPress, and then do the RSS feed thing. So we're
pretty much
in the same boat there. Yeah.
I guess I don't. That's more of how the sausage is made, back of house stuff that I don't think a lot of people know. But
yeah,
little factlet for you there.
It's cool. Well, I hope to have you on again at some point, and maybe I don't know in the future if you guys would like to. I'd like to be on the show.
Absolutely, yeah. We'll we'll figure out a time. We'll get it going, but it's always a struggle to even schedule some of the shows sometimes. So can't promise you when that'll be, but I hope it'll be sometime soon.
Yeah, no, just kind of putting my little wish out there, and then when it's granted, I'll be happy.
Similarly, it'll be a little while before I can think of a show to outdo this one in terms of weirdness, but. Next time I come up with something that's just too bizarre for Pixelated Audio, I'll hit you up.
And I'll be looking forward to it. For nothing is really too weird or bizarre or out there for VGMporium because, as I said before, as with an emporium, you don't know what you're going to find there. It's just a great jumbled pile of stuff. Thank you again, Gene, for coming on. And I do hope maybe next time we meet, we'll be at MagWest because, I'm definitely going to be going to that. And so now is the point of the show for me to give you my spiel. So, again, this is VGMporium, and you can find it at VGMporium.wordpress.com, where you can find all the links to, all the different podcatchers, such as Spotify, Google, Apple, Amazon, as well as the Discord channel, which I have, and Twitter, as well as Instagram. And hey, if you have a special order or a episode suggestion, you can send it on over to VGMporium@gmail.com, as well as on the Discord. And on the case of the special orders, it's basically song requests, and when I get enough, about 5 or 6, I'll do its own dedicated episode. And then I've been your host, RageCage, and you can also find me on Twitter and Instagram, where I'm usually just posting nonsense, and on, in case of Twitter, just liking and reposting a lot of things and sharing some of my music. And talking about music, you can listen to my original chiptune music as well as some covers I've done on SoundCloud, all RageCage, so it's RAYJKAYJ. And so as recording this spiel, I've already recorded with 2 more people, so I have 2 more guest episodes coming up in this coming month. So for the time being, for the episodes in between the guest episodes, I'm just going to be kind of doing like quickies, so nothing too in-depth or intensive, just 5 or 6 songs and then just general nonsense. And as far as what I'm going to be covering those intermittent weeks, I'm not quite sure. I'm thinking of just having some of my curators put some random things in some crates and then putting them all into a room and then blindfolding Mumba Chuamba and have them body slam a random one every once in a while to see what the topic will be. Too bad, sorry, we won't be able to see that. This is going to be, private event.